Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Seabass of WNWS. This episode presented by Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center. Wellspire offers personal and professional development opportunities in a beautiful facility in the Gulch neighborhood. Stop by for an event with world-renowned speakers or host an off-site event that will wow your team or your clients. We thank our co-sponsor, the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water and has a mission to bring clean water to the world. Our news presented by Sutherland and Belk, an SEC sports-loving injury firm in Nashville. These guys will shoot you straight on your rights and options when you have been hurt in an accident. Call them at 615-846-6200. Get your questions answered. You can visit them online at sbinjurylaw.com. Baseball America's recruiting rankings are out for the class of players who just reported to campus. And for the sixth time, the Commodores are at the top of that list. Vanderbilt will welcome 15 freshmen to campus, and it has 9 who ranked among BA's top 500 prospects for the draft that just happened this summer. Seabass appears on today's guest line, which is presented by our friends at Boll and Branch. That was started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I have slept on Boll and Branch sheets for about 6 years now. They are fantastic. Since I got them, I have not used anything else. They're fair trade certified. It means they're made under safe conditions by men and women, treated and paid fairly. Try them free for a month. They have a guarantee. If you don't like them, you can send them back. And if you have the sheets, get the mattress. That was voted best mattress of 2018. There's a special offer. Go to the site. That's bollandbranch.com. Get $50 off your first set of sheets with the promo code VANDY. Seabass joins us today from WNWS in Jackson, Tennessee, as he does every week. Thank you for joining us, my man. I think I'll do the show sitting down today.
Yeah, me too. As a matter of fact, I'm reclining right now as we speak.
You so busted me. I did George Plaster's show yesterday, and you listened to it. I like to do a couple things at once, and I don't get a chance to just get off my feet and exercise enough. So I took a walk around the block while I was doing George's show, and apparently you could hear me doing a little extra breathing, I guess, going up a hill or two. I did not know that was on air. I feel so terrible about that now.
I called Chris last night. I said, what exactly were you doing during that interview? Like you would do it on the treadmill. No, man, that's the magic of it all, man. Man, we're not trying to win some kind of award, man. Did you get the info that needed to get out there yesterday? Yes. I enjoyed every bit of it.
Let's talk the quarterback situation. Is it just me, or does that bug you a bit?
Why would it bug me? Just out of curiosity. What bugs you about it?
It's not that what happened with the offensive line wasn't significant, and maybe that was everything, but people get too locked into it's this. They have a situation, they size it up, it's black and white. Oh, it was just the offensive line. Well, no, life is usually more complicated than that. What if it was not just the offensive line is what I'm getting at.
Look, as you know, no coach is going out there for their team to perform the best and win a football game. What other reason would there possibly be? The only thing, and look, I understand the excuse about the offensive line, and I thought that what Watson Brown said on that interview that you were in is like, okay, they took the more shots that they took, anything past the intermediate to short range passes, ran the risk of Riley Neal getting killed. The only problem is we never even got a chance to find out. I mean, that may very well be true, but we never even tested it.
Yeah, but what made you feel good about that performance, too? I'm not saying that he can't have a good season. I'm not even saying he's not their best player. I don't know. I have some doubts about it. I mean, they're their best quarterback. I'm just saying based on what I saw, I didn't feel any better about it.
Oh, well, that's a different discussion, whether it bugs me or not. The situation as far as the game, I have no idea what Riley Neal can do because, that was complete training wheels. 5-yard outs, quick hitches, things like that. I mean, that's beyond elementary. And if you're doing it to keep them upright, that's great. But and I get you were missing 40% of your starting offensive line and it's totally pieced together. But that doesn't mean that you don't at least attempt. And I don't know what Riley Neal can do. If eyes mean anything, if the eyes tell you anything, he looked I guess, a little bit rattled, but it's not like he got sacked 8 times. It's not like every time he got the ball, they were in his face and he was about to get clobbered. That didn't happen. They didn't give the opportunity to happen. Would it have happened? Yeah, probably, maybe. I don't know. But we never got a chance to find out. I think he threw behind his receiver a couple of times. I think the thing that probably told me the most, and I don't know if it was about Riley Neal, about the play calling or what. I know you were at the game, but if you've had to go back and had a chance to go back and watch the television broadcast, you could see the absolute look of, I don't want to really to say disgust, but that's probably something close to it, on the face of Kalijah Lipscomb. Have you had a chance to see that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, but I heard people mention that, and that's part of the thing that worries me. Let me get to something else too, okay? We couldn't see practice. And again, I'm not saying that he's not the best quarterback. I don't know. But you heard reports from people, or I did, that people I trusted that said in scrimmages that Wallace was the better quarterback. Now, that was a couple weeks before the season started. Again, I don't know how it went from there. But Tim Corbin said this to us one time. The players know who the best players are. And what I wonder, was that a look of disgust that they weren't playing the best guy? Or was that a look of disgust out of frustration? I don't know. I'm just putting all the things on the table right now. Here's the counterpoint to this, because I wanted to look this up too. Sometimes guys are the best guy and they just have a bad game. Case in point, Kyle Shermer was the best quarterback on the roster last year. He had a stretch against Georgia last year, 14-28, 169 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. The next week, Florida, 18-36, 229, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, but he was just 50% completions. A couple weeks before that, South Carolina was really bad. 18-38, 47.4% completions, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. The year before, Shermer's 4-15 against Alabama for 18 yards. So look, here's what I'm saying. Riley Neal is hardly the first quarterback to have a bad game against an elite defense. I mean, even Kyle Shermer, after 4 years, still had some of those. So I'm just saying, I don't know what that was, but the things that I heard about Wallace being the best in scrimmages a little bit, paired with that, does make me wonder a little bit. Again, I didn't see the last 2 weeks. I don't know the full story, but that kind of thing makes me wonder, okay, what was that look about?
You remember I told you on this podcast last week before this game, I said the same thing you were just talking about with Tim Corbin. Didn't I, Chris? Didn't I tell you?
You did.
The players know. And again, because neither one of us were there, it's all secondhand, and that sucks, but it is what it is. We don't have anything else to go on. I have to believe that Deuce Wallace had a chance to win the job, and Deuce Wallace didn't do that. Because I need another reason as to why Derek Mason would not put the best quarterback out there. That would make no sense whatsoever. So if that is somehow the case, which I don't believe that it is, but if that somehow were the case, I'd need a reason why.
Well, I generally agree with you. I do know that transfer recruiting thing is very important to them. So I think the perception, let's say if it's close, and I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm thinking through this when we don't have access. You have to go by what you hear, and you have to go by what you see. And maybe Riley Neal outplayed Deuce Wallace, and it was crystal clear the last 2 weeks. But just based on what I've gathered, I know that that's very important to them to keep that transfer pipeline alive, which, by the way, this is where this kind of ties in a little bit to the crowd. I don't know how in the world you recruit to that if you're them. When you're bringing your players in fact, it makes me wonder if the early signing period in some ways might not be a bad thing for them, because I think a lot of times they just brought their guys in for officials to basketball games during the winter, which that's no good right now either. But you get what I'm saying is when you are at a point where all your home games in the league, you're outnumbered by the other team's fans, and sometimes grossly so. It's a horrible look for recruiting. I think the transfer market becomes more important for them, and I don't think that was zero factor in this. Again, I'm not saying that Riley was not the best quarterback or couldn't have won the job outright, but I promise you that's a factor right now. Is they need to be able to sell transfers that you can come in here and you can make an immediate impact, and those kids are at a different point in their lives. They are almost about to graduate. Pro football may or may not be an option. a degree to Vanderbilt has much more value to them as a 21 or 22-year-old than it does as a 17 or 18-year-old. And I think it's a legit strategy. Yeah. It's just funny how that kind of, in a way, that kind of came full circle, knowing that's a big deal and watching that crowd.
Not saying it's not a big deal, but Chris, they constitute what percentage of an 85-man roster?
They constitute a smaller percent, but they constitute a much bigger portion of the two-deep depth chart, I believe.
Not than their counterparts who were regularly recruited and spend 4 or 5 years of their life there. No, I doubt they're 10%. And if you're going to, and I get some of them are plug and play, and I understand all of that, but who in their right mind would come to a place that's going to allow inferior players to play because just to be able to keep that pipeline open, and it constitutes maybe 10% of the makeup of your roster? There's no way I'd go there.
I'm just saying, if it is close, I could see that being a factor, is what I'm saying.
If everything else were even, that might be a variable to a factor, but I refuse to believe that's the reason he got the start against Georgia. I have to believe that he got the start because he won the job in camp. Anything else is unacceptable. If I'm a player, not me as the fan, but if I'm a player, nothing else is acceptable. And again, they know, so, I mean, I don't know what that look was. It was pretty early on in the game, and you could tell that Elijah was frustrated. But I'll say this, if you keep the training wheels and the governors on like that, why would a safety need to protect anything out past the intermediate? Why would they even worry about it? They wouldn't. And they weren't. And they were sitting up in there. And so when you have certain routes and certain schemes that force them to patrol that third level, and they don't ever even have to worry about it, that it's never an issue. They know that everything is staying underneath them the whole game. You know how much easier it is for them? How much harder it becomes for you in your passing game? I mean, I get the protection is an issue. And Watson Brown was probably right about that. But I don't care. You have to make somebody at least consider the possibility that if they're not in position, they could get beat on that third level. And that did not take place. I mean, I think other than garbage time at the end, I think the farthest pass was thrown by a wide receiver.
Yeah, I think it was. They just didn't have any challenge downfield to Georgia. Gun to your head, what is your level of concern about that position right now?
Well, I'd be stupid if I said anything else than a lot. I mean, we don't have a proven quarterback there. I think that it is 100% true that this game right here is the perfect barometer to tell us a whole lot more about what we have as a football team, not just Riley, Neal, every bit of it. I mean, Purdue seems to me like a team right now that is probably closer to what we are. They have a lot of question marks, and I don't mind playing it on the road because basically I've decided every game we play is on the road. We can do this. We can ask these questions right now, but I think Saturday will answer most of them.
They're going to have home games now against UNLV, Northern Illinois, and ETSU, and maybe Missouri.
That maybe 15 to 20,000 people will be at. I mean, I'm not even going to worry about that anymore because I can't control it, and I'm convinced there's nothing we can do about it. Those are things that we've been dealing with for a long time, so it's not, yes, it'll always be something that's held against Coach Mason and any coach that's trying to recruit for Vanderbilt. That is what it is. There's no sense in logging a whole lot of time about it. We all know the situation, and it ain't going to change. So I'm just going to adopt that attitude that every day, every game is a road game. So the fact that this game in West Lafayette is in Lafayette I don't think the outcome will be any different on our end. Maybe a little more motivation for Purdue, and I know that they're honoring that young man that passed away. But as far as being up for a game, I don't think it's going to be any different than in this game we're in Nashville.
Oh, I think they play better on the road because at least you go to somebody else's house and you expect that. It's disheartening when you see it in your own building.
That's one word for it. It's just disgraceful. I can't make people come to the game. They're going to do what they want to do. They're going to spend their money on what they want. They haven't exactly been courted nearly the way they should have. There's a lot of culpability to go around. But you know who suffers? It's not me and you. Them players, man. It sucks for them. Makes me sick at my stomach. But, I mean, honestly, I can be about it all day long. But the fact is I don't have an answer for you. And I don't know that Malcolm Turner has an answer for anybody. I don't know that anybody has an answer, because it's like I called you up and told you, the fact of the matter is people want to come to Nashville. Nobody's begging to get to Starkville or Fayetteville. It's not somewhere you stay. It's not where you go to have a big weekend. You go to the football game, you leave. This is a place where this is a destination city, and it gets more and more so every day. And these groups, these packs of fans from these teams that have massive fan bases, I mean, they get together. Now, people say, well, win more. Yes, that's true. Stop selling your tickets to other people. When you can sell that ticket, put $500 in your pocket and still go to the game, a lot of people aren't going to turn that down. I wouldn't do it, but, and there's a big rift between those who do and those who won't. But none of that is going to change anything. I don't even know how winning consistently truly turns things around. James had it going better, but even he, after 2 9-win seasons in a row, was still frustrated with the attendance. If you took away the fan base of the other team, we couldn't have filled that stadium up, even when we're winning 9 games a year. I don't know what you do about that. And so to me, because I don't know of any other Power 5 team that faces this issue, not one that I know of anyway. I don't think Duke deals with this. I know Northwestern doesn't deal with it. They don't worry about the fact that the Bears and the Bulls, the Blackhawks are in town and all this other stuff, and the White Sox, they somehow still find a way to put people in the stands. But for some reason, this particular school can't do it. But it is a haven for all the other teams, and it drives me nuts. I'm sorry to get on that soapbox there. It just drives me crazy. When I turned on my television and I saw that sea of red, and when they were smirking about how, oh, man, do you think they need to go to a silent count at their own home? I don't think those words have ever been uttered before in college football until Saturday night. But I think that if you're a Vanderbilt fan, it's just something you have to be willing to accept or jump on the bandwagon of some other team like everybody else does.
I was thinking this morning, after that first season, if the attendance is only going to get worse, that the administration is not going to do anything to help him. If that after 2014, what is your prediction for Vanderbilt football heading into 2019 and how far his career goes? If you don't know anything that's happened, what are you thinking, like knowing, okay, you just saw that, what's ahead the next 4 years, knowing that it's all going to get worse in terms of the things that he can't control?
I'd be honest with you, I would have thought it'd been a lot worse than it actually has been.
Me too. Me too.
This is like, you know what this is like? This would be like in the 100 meters in the Olympics. And I'm not even saying take the best runner. I'm just saying take one of the runners and tie a 20-pound ball to his ankle and say, go, and start running. And nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear that guy with the 20-pound ball wrapped around his ankle bitching about it. He's sitting there finishing dead last or close to it, and he never can seem to win. He runs his heart out. He plays. He does everything. He trains hard, runs, works, does everything he can possibly do. But he has that 20-pound ball wrapped around his ankle, and it's not coming off. It could possibly with the right tools, but it ain't coming off. Nobody wants to hear about the fact that he's got it on there because it doesn't affect them. But it's still tied down. That's what he deals with. And any coach that's been at that school, that's what they deal with from the time they take that job. Now, yes, they get compensated, and yes, they know it going in, but I don't think they truly know it, especially if they didn't come from here, and play in the SEC or coach in the SEC and they come from somewhere else. They can't actualize that. They can't see that until they get there, because they think it's major college football, everybody's coming. And then they get there and they see a group of students who think it's fashionable not to be there or to leave at halftime or to show up a quarter and a half late, that somehow that makes them look cool. And a fan base that's hanging on by a thread that usually fights against each other for a bunch of different reasons. And I don't know what the answer is. I'm sitting here yakking about it. I don't have one answer to provide you other than to say win more games. But isn't it all tied together, Chris?
Well, okay, let me give you what I think is the fair take. There are things about him that are easy to identify. The clock management, the offensive stubbornness and conservatism over the years, which hopefully you see that change this year, because I just want to see what they can do with this bunch if they can get the line and the quarterback play right. And then on top of that, the defensive stubbornness. I mean, let's face it, he should have gone to a 4-3 long before now. Those are fair criticisms, all that. But at the same time, he's got to be doing a lot of stuff right, man, to have not just like completely cratered. I mean, they beat Tennessee 3 years in a row. They've been competitive. They've been to a couple bowls. They've not been to they've not had a winning season, but they've gotten close. It's like I watched that spectacle in the crowd, and it made me appreciate him more because, yes, it could have cratered. They could have gone 0-12 or 1-11, but they didn't. He stuck it out this far. He's managed to do some things, and I think one thing I respect about him, you don't see him at his press conference making excuses or complaining. And my goodness, if anybody has reason to complain about lack of support or anything, it's that guy.
That's right. But, the good news is it appears that we have somebody who's ready to change that in Malcolm Turner. It may take a little while, but it appears like he's very serious about this. And one thing we haven't talked about, now I don't know a thing in the world about the lady, but the interim chancellor, if you will, she seems to be very pro-sports from everything I've read and seen. I don't know if she's actively being considered for that job, but I would certainly hope so.
Yeah, that is consistent with what I've heard, that she's pro-sports and not just from a show up at games now that I'm the interim chancellor. Like, that was her thing for years, that she showed up and was legitimately a fan. That's Susan Wente. I think it's Wente. It could be Went, but I think it's Wente. So I do think that she is a sports fan from what I hear, and I would have to think she's going to be up for that spot, but I don't really know for sure.
Well, I certainly hope so. But back. Let's go back because I only got about 15 minutes. Back to Saturday. Okay, let's find some positives because there were some. I mean, the thing about Vanderbilt is I don't really know any more about them than I did before the game started, other than the fact they're not better than Georgia, and I was pretty sure I knew that anyway. There were some good things. Look, Key is still Key. He was just liable to bust one on any play. Still a great runner. I was already I had high hopes for anyway, and I really thought Deshaun Jerkins really played well. I mean, he was all over that play, the fake punt and the fumble, and just being all over the field. A sure tackler. I think there's a bright future for that cat. I mean, he was playing Georgia, and it was his first action, and boy, was he up to it. He looked legit. Davion Davis is just not the type of DB or defensive lineman that we generally get, but he walked in there and made a difference. As a true freshman. And Dio played hard. His length, his motor still is absolutely fantastic. And I'll say this to you. I mean, it was vanilla as it could possibly be, but for a ragtag group who was pieced together and a couple weren't even starters, I thought the offensive line did okay. I mean, they weren't great, but I think they did okay for the most part, all things considered.
Yeah, I did too, and I think the hope, if you're them, is presuming they get Young and Cochran back, and I think they're coming back soon. I don't know if it'll be this week or if it'll be the LSU game. It'll be after the bye. But when they get back, you saw them so many times the last few years just go with the same five, or maybe go with four the whole game and then split time with Clemens and Young. Now maybe you've had some guys that have played a bit, maybe have a little luxury and a little trust to give some other guys a rest. And I think that's one of those things that they weren't going to beat Georgia anyway. So if you can get out of that and get your linemen a little bit of confidence and just get that first game nervousness, what's it like to be out there, feeling out of the way, then maybe that's a thing that ends up being a blessing by season's end.
Did it look to you like there were times, I mean, the yards obviously didn't pile up, but did it look like to you that this team was capable of moving the ball on Georgia at times in that game?
Not really. not as bad as the quarterback play was. No, I mean, I shouldn't say the passing game. And again, maybe that was affected by the center position, but no, I didn't really at any point. I guess you've always got the possibility of getting one to Vaughn on the outside, and he can break one against anybody. But no, other than that, I didn't ever feel like they were going to be a threat to Georgia once that game settled in.
No, I never thought they were going to light up like do pinball numbers, but there were a few times where I thought, you know what, this team, there's ability here. They can move the football here. They never really pulled the trigger on it, but I don't know, man. I didn't see a team. Look, I'm going to put it to you like this way. Here's what I'm trying to say. I've seen Vanderbilt offenses that didn't have a prayer of moving the football no matter what. That they just had no talent. That's not the case here. I had a couple of opportunities to score that didn't result in points, but I see maybe not so much a game plan as I do potential, material there. And maybe that's what I'm looking at. Another bright spot that I saw, so Afamui played pretty well. First game starting, right? He didn't start at all last year, right?
Correct. He did play a little more in the bowl game. I think he got his most snaps against Baylor. By the way, that's the thing. That whole inside linebacker thing makes me uneasy too. I don't understand why they can't get more out of that bunch than they have, because I don't think from a talent standpoint that group is that bad, and I don't get that at all.
Who's coaching the inside linebackers?
I believe that's Tarver's, isn't it?
So that's what I was thinking, but I wasn't 100% sure. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I'm a little bit concerned there as well. Look, I don't know enough about this team right now after that game against Georgia, just because it was such a mismatch. Look, there's no way Georgia's just a good team. Georgia's going to be a great team. I can't envision anybody in the East actually challenging Georgia at the end of the day, and that includes Florida. I think they run away with the East and have every opportunity to win the Southeastern Conference. That offensive line alone gives them the chance to do that if you removed everything else. So I don't really know what we are right now. I'm a little bit in limbo like the rest of the Vanderbilt fans. What I do believe is that there's still an opportunity for this to be a fantastic season, but we just cannot. And look, because we're going to face LSU in 10 days. And, they got the same type of beast coming in, maybe not as many, but they got the same type of beast as Georgia. I mean, is that what we're going to do? If the opponent is like, well, we're just going to, we'll minimize the playbook to almost nothing. If I have one criticism about Saturday night is we most certainly did not go down swinging. I'm not talking about from a player standpoint, but from a game plan standpoint, we most certainly, and look, I get it. You got to be conservative in certain things. You got to ease these guys into it, but we never even attempted, other than that wide receiver pass, to mix it up. We had nothing to lose. By halftime, you had nothing to lose. Yeah, you knew you were completely outmatched. So by God, stand there and swing hard as you can. You don't do anything. You don't do anything. You're not winning this game anyway. But I don't know I don't know how that serves the team. Because I don't know what that message says. They were too good for us, and we knew it, so we just modified the game plan to nothing.
See, I think that's why I'm concerned. I thought they could at least get the ball in space to guys to minimize some of the offensive line issues. The fact that they couldn't do that at all, I mean, really? You couldn't do that a couple times, get the ball a few yards downfield? That's what has me concerned. Now, again, may change all starting Saturday, but that kind of goes back to my concerns at quarterback a little bit.
Where was the jet sweep, Chris? Where was the screen? Where were these things our idea? We tried to make hitches a part of the extension of the running game, and quick slants and everything underneath, but I like isolating people in space. Things like a jet sweep can do that. We got Cam Johnson. I don't think we did that. Did we even run a jet sweep the whole night?
I'm glad you brought Cam up. I do not understand the whole thing with him being fourth to fifth receiver on this team right now. That doesn't make sense to me unless he was nursing some sort of an injury, which if he was, I guess why was he playing 30 snaps or whatever he played? But I will counterpoint you a little bit. If you're not sure that the snap is not going over the center's head, is a jet sweep a play maybe you want to take out of the playbook for the time being?
Well, if that's the case, whereas that's the neighborhood we're going to live in, then just go under center.
Maybe that's what they should have done. Then all of a sudden, it's easier to pinpoint whether this is a quarterback thing or whether it's a snap timing thing.
And that's a great point that you brought up that we hadn't mentioned yet so far today, but is very necessary. These shotgun snaps were so, at the same time, I mean, I get it's Miller's first game, but man, you got to get that down. I mean, everything starts right there. And clearly he wasn't trying to snap it bad, but I don't care. That doesn't matter. Hey, it's game time, Jack. Somebody has got to get that snap down. It has to happen, or none of this matters.
I guess Miller has practiced mostly at center, but could you not have thrown Dawkins over to center? I mean, the snaps could not have been worse.
Oh, I wouldn't say they couldn't have been, but they weren't great. They were not great, and they throw the timing off of everything. That has to get fixed. I'm going to tell you right now, if I'm Norcross, that's all I'm working on with Miller all week long. I'm sitting there snapping all day long. I got you for 20 hours. The whole 20 hours you're snapping. Just snap out of the shotgun. I don't care if you have to do it 400 times a day. By the time Thursday rolls around, Friday rolls around, we head up to West Lafayette, you'll be sick of snapping. You'll be able to do it in your sleep. You've done it so much. Repetition is the key here. Get it done. Get it done. Because if you don't, this offense is going nowhere, period, unless you just run it out of the, line them up under center and go from there. Because if we keep dealing with this, whoever is back there is dead. It doesn't really matter.
I want to change topics because you've got to go, and this is something I definitely want to hit. Other than LSU, that game is totally unwinnable. You saw what happens when they match up against athletes, and it's going to be the same thing in 2 weeks from now. So forget that one. Does anybody else on that schedule?
Wait, I'm not calling that game totally unwinnable.
But how can you say that at this point?
Because you played one game and it was against Georgia.
Yeah, but we've seen this over and over. When they play those teams with that elite kind of athleticism, they're never close. There's a limit on what you can do when you were that outmanned with talent.
Is that what you said? They're never close?
They'd never come close to beating an elite team with Mason. No.
Depends on what we're talking about here. I'll just say this to you. Now, I'm not comparing them to Georgia because they haven't been, but Keyshawn Vaughn doesn't go down last year. They beat Florida.
Florida's not on an elite level like those teams.
Like who? Like LSU?
No, last year's Florida team is not as good as this year's LSU.
LSU's played Georgia Southern. You don't know what they are. They played one game and it was against Georgia Southern. You don't know what LSU is this year.
Agree to disagree. I think that LSU is going to be pretty good. Let's put that aside for a minute.
But let's let it happen before we just crown them the SEC West champs.
Okay, well, I think you're going to be very disappointed, but it is a free country. I will say this, though. The rest of that schedule, does anybody else among those other 10 teams concern you more than it did before they teed up the first football game this year? Because my answer is no.
No, of course not. Most of the East played horribly.
Yeah.
And South Carolina without their quarterback, and we don't know how long that's going to be with Benton. So, no, the rest of the East does not frighten. No, they don't. The way that they played and the teams that they played. And, look, I mean, North Carolina's coming back. They're Brown's certainly doing a good job. South Carolina loses that game. The one that blew me away, congratulations to your nephew. I cannot believe Missouri lost to Wyoming.
Yeah, I was shocked at that, too.
Kentucky, look, Toledo's not bad, but they sleptwalked through the first half. They didn't do anything special. Tennessee losing to the worst Division I team I could think of. Yeah, the East, that's what I was saying about Georgia. There's not anything that resembles competition in my mind. We can say Florida if we want to, but Florida wasn't overly impressive. I saw a good-looking defensive line, but I also saw a line with 3 freshmen on it. So there's not another East game. You can't tell me that we can't win. Now, will we? No, maybe, maybe not. But you can't tell me that there's anybody else in the East we can't line up and go at least have the opportunity to beat.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. South Carolina is always the one they have trouble with for some reasons. That's one of those, like, I'll still believe it when I see it. I mean, even if me or you were lining up at quarterback. I remember the year that they went in there and Spurrier had just resigned. They were awful. They still couldn't win that game. That's just one that they just seem to trip up on no matter what. Look, one of these days they're going to win that game again. But let me get to one mailbag question before I get you out of here. Our mailbag is presented by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. Do you need home, auto, motorcycle, renters, landlord, life, or commercial insurance? Josh is who you need to contact. Call him 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him on Facebook at JD Minton HQ. He's my insurance agent. Give him a try. Think you'll be pleased. Mr. Vandy says, which one of the position groups gives you the most hope as we move into the season? Which gives you the most concern?
Man, that's tough because given we just didn't see much. Let me give you the one that I like a little bit. And you may completely disagree with me on this, Chris. But I thought our transfer DBs played pretty well. And I really liked what I saw out of Jerkins. So I think I might go with DB here. One that gives me some hope. The one that I'm concerned with, I don't know how I can't say offensive line. I mean, there are some other things that make me a little bit nervous, but I don't know how offensive line couldn't be number one. So I'm going to go DBs and offensive line.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think it's not like you can't say that Georgia didn't try to challenge him downfield and didn't have athletes to do it. That was a very pleasant surprise, was the way that secondary played.
Yeah, and let's think about this for a second. Okay, no Jake Bentley. Let's just pretend like he's not there when we play. So Felipe Franks, Johnson, Bentley, Garrett Mate or Bentley's replacement, Garantano, and then Kelly Bryant, who again they lost to Wyoming. I mean, if we get stellar secondary play and we force teams, to run the football a bit more, maybe we can start stacking the box a little bit and we can isolate our DBs and let them do their thing on their own if they're legit. Maybe the entire defense gets better as a result of that. And, Offamui and Davis and Dio doing their thing. A couple more people step up. Maybe this defense looks a little better than you think. What I want to see, what I'm really interested to see is what Georgia's like offensively going forward. They're still a little green in their passing game with some of their new guys, and that's fine. But I'll be real interested to see the type of offensive figures that they put up. If you would have asked me, will you accept 30 points at the end of the day for Georgia when the game's over with? I probably would have said yeah.
Oh, there's no question. I think if they're going to score 30 points, you're turning backflips. Because I thought they could get into the 20s against Georgia. And of course, I missed that one badly. But no, I didn't in my wildest dreams think they'd be holding to Georgia to 30 points. And that's with Georgia trying to score up to the very end.
Yeah, that's a good point because Georgia was trying to score. So
with its starting quarterback, by the way, yes.
This is college football, not NFL. How much you win by does matter. At the same time, that first half, it looked like, oh, my God, Georgia can literally do whatever they want, But I thought there were some decent adjustments and much better production defensively in the second half. So I'm not overly disgusted with anything I saw defensively. Didn't love the first quarter and a half. I mean, I thought it looked exactly like last year. But we were also playing the number one offensive line in America, and I certainly factor that in. So, yeah, I'm going to stick with that. And are you going to use the same people? Are you going to say DBs and offensive line?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know why you would change that. I mean, I came up, oddly enough, I came out more encouraged about that offensive line because I just had such low expectations. But there's a path, like I said, if you get your starters back, stay decently healthy, and you got some guys experienced now, I think there's a path to a good offense that includes those guys because I think they can mitigate some of their weaknesses. Again, that was a team that they were up against so much athleticism that it's just hard to judge what they did because the fights, other than LSU, the fights the rest of the year are not going to be like that. Florida will be the exception, but I'm not sold on Florida's offense.
Nor should you be. Now, their defense is going to be tough to navigate. There's no question about that. Past them, I mean, a couple of these teams surprised me, but a couple of them were pretty much what I thought. And one of those teams is Ole Miss. Ole Miss is absolutely what I thought they were. And maybe they'll get better as the year goes, but I think that at least in the early stages, they are going to be very heavily dependent on Scotty Phillips. And I think he's capable of delivering, but I mean that's not exactly. I mean, I know a lot of Memphis fans are thinking this is one of the better defenses they've had. They're okay. There's nothing special about that Memphis defense. You're just going to find that Ole Miss doesn't scare anybody vertically right now at all. That's going to be one of our common opponents. I mean, I just think it sets up pretty well for Vanderbilt. I'm not calling 10 wins or anything like that, but from what I've seen of most of our opponents so far, one weekend, there's not a whole lot that terrifies me, to be honest with you.
Well, I do think Missouri is going to get a lot better. Those were some weird plays and a weird way that game panned out. I think you've seen that from Missouri before. They'll lay a clunker in the opener and then end up being pretty good. So I think that Bryant's a pretty good player. Just had a couple of critical turnovers at a bad time. That's the one team that I think will probably be a lot better if I had to pick one of all those other 10 teams. That's the one that I'm hanging my hat on that I think could end up looking a lot better than it looked in week one. And I guess you could say that about Florida too. I do have concerns about the offense. And I mean, it wasn't like Florida was terrible. It beat a pretty decent Miami team.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. I don't want to be too harsh on Florida, but offensively, I think they look a whole lot like they did last year, and Franks doesn't look any better to me. But, that's a Manny Diaz defense, so who knows?
Kentucky, to me, is kind of a wild card because I think they're pretty well coached. I think Stoops has done a good job. I just think they lost so much, and I don't know about the quarterback play. I could kind of argue either way on them. I still am going to sort of stick to a more pessimistic outlook on them than most, but I could see why I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, I have some flexibility for Kentucky. It's just the pieces that they did lose were so freaking important. You know what I mean? I mean, best running back in the school's history, you could argue, the best pass rusher they've ever had. One of the better DBs they've had in a while. I mean, the pieces that they lost were critical pieces, but there's a lot in place, and I agree. Stoops is pretty good. And, with Missouri, I think that's probably fair because, look, I mean, getting Kelly Bryant was a huge thing for them. Let's think about this for a sec. Kelly Bryant didn't lose his job because he wasn't a good quarterback. He lost his job because Trevor Lawrence came to Clemson. Unless a head coach just takes a staunch line and says, no, this guy over here is my quarterback. I don't want the best. I want this guy as my quarterback, and I'm not going to trust a true freshman. There's not a quarterback Trevor Lawrence couldn't have beaten out.
There was another thing we didn't discuss in week one. It was that quarterbacks fleeing college football playoff teams had a pretty good weekend.
Fair. Justin Fields looked good. No question about it. And I told you, I told my buddy last week, I was so busy this past week that I didn't get a chance to. I'll try. I said, man, we got to find a way. I want to go down to Tunica and do a futures bet on Jalen Hurts to win the Heisman Trophy, because I think it was like 15-1 or something like that. And I'm like, okay, let's think about this. First of all, you want to talk about his limitations? He had a few, but he put up. Go back and look at his statistics at Alabama, Chris.
Oh, he was good. Yeah.
They're mind-blowing. And that's against LSU and Auburn and Mississippi State and teams like that. And now you unleash him with Lincoln Riley in his ear, CeeDee Lamb to throw the football to, and Big 12 defenses to go up against. Dude, he's tailor-made to win the Heisman Trophy. And they're not going to not give it to him because he'd be the third straight Oklahoma transfer quarterback to win it. Because, I don't know if you saw that game against Houston, but if he had wanted to and Lincoln Riley would let him, he'd have ran for over 200 yards and thrown for however many he felt like throwing, maybe 400 yards. And I think he had and I know you were nervous about it, and we both know why. He had, 6 touchdowns before they called the dogs off?
Here's a takeaway from this podcast if you get nothing else. Draft Oklahoma quarterbacks in fantasy football.
Man, you almost got Minshew again.
I almost did. I got lucky. I have to admit it.
And I want to publicly on the air, and I want to say congratulations to Chris Lee for winning our matchup in week number 1. And thank you so much, Yahoo, because I lost by 5 points. And I would like to thank Yahoo, who neglected to tell anybody that Arizona State's kicker wasn't playing and that the backup kicker was going to be kicking. Well, luckily for me, I got no points whatsoever. And my tight end, Cheyenne O'Grady, who was supposed to play, didn't play. And I still only lost by 5 to you, Jackrabbit. Look out, I'm coming for you next time.
You know, it took you 5 minutes to get to it, but I finally got what I went fishing for with that comment that led off.
I can pretend like it doesn't bother me, but it does.
Hey, it's always fun when you and I go up against each other in fantasy football. And I know that fans just wish we could talk about it a lot longer, about our fantasy football teams, because audience always enjoy that. But you've got to go, so I'm going to let you do that. Tell people where to follow you on Twitter and where to find your show.
Yeah, you can find my show at WNWS.com or 101.5 FM in Jackson, 6 to 8 p.m. And online on Twitter at Cheap Seats Bass. That's at Cheap Seats Bass. And because you didn't ask, I'm going to tell you anyway, your final score from West Lafayette this Saturday, Vanderbilt 31, Purdue 30. It's a thriller, Chris Lee. Your game winner, are you ready for this? C.J. Bowler catches a 14-yard slant from
Riley Neal.
Riley Neal. I know what his name is. I was trying to build up the drama to see if it would be Deuce Wallace or not. From Riley Neal with 8 seconds left to go. Extra point is tipped at the line of scrimmage, but has just enough to go up over the bar, which, by the way, Riley Gay looked good on Saturday night, knocking stiff that 46-yarder. And Vanderbilt wins 31-30 to go to 1-1 on the season.
Be good, my man.
All right.
He's Seabass. I'm Chris Lee. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast.